But yeah, I definitely thought about that, and it couldn't have been scripted any better. To fight a guy to beat a guy who has now beaten me for the world title. I had one goal when I got into this sport: to be the #1 guy in the world, to be widely regarded unanimously as the #1 guy in the world. Charles Oliveira stole that from me, beat me fair and square, but he stole that dream from me.
Bem-vindos ao canal Clips MMA. Esse mês teremos o tão aguardado UFC 309 em Nova York. Não só pela possível última luta do John Jones, mas também pelo retorno do Charles do Bronx, tentando voltar para o caminho das vitórias contra o Michael Chandler, que em todas as entrevistas está prometendo fazer a melhor performance da vida contra o Charles. Vamos conferir, deixe a opinião de vocês aí nos comentários e bora!
And now here we are, this opportunity, huge opportunity against Charles Oliveira, #1 contender fight, co-main event, 5 rounds on the John Jones versus Stipe at Madison Square Garden, the world's most iconic arena. It's not the Conor fight, but if you could think of a next best thing, this is definitely it, and now we're working toward the title.
And obviously you do take all of that into this fight here. Madison Square Garden, like you mentioned. Charles Oliveira, second time you guys are meeting. This is your 4th time at Madison Square Garden. You have not quite climbed the
It's
hurdle.
okay. You can say I'm
0-3
at Madison Square Garden. That's okay. Let's just get that out of the way right there. Don't be afraid to beat around the bush. I have never won inside of Madison Square Garden, so I'm deciding to change that this time.
So, but how do you do you like that challenge? Is that really something that, like, obviously that's not why you take the fight here, but when it comes to you and they say, okay, it is Madison Square Garden, the thought has to go through your head, and you seem to like to meet these challenges, right?
Yeah, I love the challenges, and let's start off by saying it's a huge blessing to be considered for the Madison Square Garden card. They don't just throw anybody on the Madison Square Garden card. They are guys. The UFC puts guys and gals on the fight card that are going to put on a great show. And I saw John Jones at UFC 306 at the Spear. We said hi, took a picture together, the main and co-main, and he's like, "Hey man, make sure you save some excitement for me because I'm the main event." And I'm like, "Yeah, probably not, man. I'm coming to steal the show." But yeah, I definitely thought about that, and it couldn't have been scripted any better. To fight a guy to beat a guy who has now beaten me for the world title. I had one goal when I got into this sport: to be the #1 guy in the world, to be widely regarded unanimously as the #1 guy in the world. Charles Oliveira stole that from me, beat me fair and square, but he stole that dream from me. And now I get the opportunity to right that wrong in my mind, show up a better fighter, get my hand raised. And then when I beat Charles Oliveira, I am the highest ranked guy in the lightweight division, not named Arman Sarukian or Islam Makhachev, who are fighting in most likely January, it sounds like people are talking about. So I'll be cage side watching that fight to watch who my next fight is, who I'm going to fight for the title. So you couldn't have scripted it any better. And it's at Madison Square Garden, where I have currently been defeated. Every fight's been great. Fight of the night every time. Fight of the year 2021 with Justin Gaethje. Fight of the year candidate with Dustin Poirier. So it couldn't be scripted any better. The stage is set, and it's the world's most iconic arena. I'm gonna go there and steal the show.
So obviously, yeah, tons of demons you can exercise in this one. That first fight though, Charles Oliveira, 2021, that was in Houston. That was not at the Garden, but you put him through the ringer in that first round. He had you in some spots too. I mean, that was a wild fight too. You're only in those wild fights, of course. But other than the obvious, I'm curious, what went right and wrong that night for you?
I'll tell you exactly what went wrong. I signed with the organization in September of 2020, and then I was fighting for the world title in May of 2021. I only had one fight inside the UFC octagon, and it was against Dan Hooker, #5 guy in the world. I knocked him out within 2.5 minutes. So I had 2 or 2.5 minutes of experience inside of the UFC octagon. A week after that fight, Hunter Campbell calls me and said, "Khabib is retiring. He's really not coming back. Poirier and Conor are fighting each other. So now it's you versus Charles to fight for the title." So I had almost no time to really process and build and grow. I'm 38 years old, and I was 34 back then, but I'm still growing. We're all still growing as human beings. And I just I wasn't where I needed to be. I went in there very confident. I put in a great training camp, but I went out there to try to kill Charles Oliveira in the first second of the first round. 10-8'd him in the first round, and I just wasn't able to keep that pace. I made a bad decision, put myself in some bad spots. I wasn't fighting to the best of my ability, and I've since fixed all of those things, mainly mentally and spiritually. And I just think it's going to be It's going to be a masterful performance, and I think I'm going to surgically and systematically break this man down until he looks for the exit sign, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to finish, and I'm going to get my hand raised. And what did go right is he felt my power, he felt my tenacity, he felt my speed, he felt my strength, he felt my size, he felt my presence for as long as that fight lasted. He remembers that. I'm not saying he's scared of me. I'm not saying he's apprehensive or fearful of me. But he knows what he is up against. And this version of me, Chandler 2.0, is much different than Chandler 1.0 that he fought at UFC 262 in Houston. And I'm excited to go out there and not just show him that, but to show the entire world that.